Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Jakarta EE Community Call. Today, we're here already with Kevin Sutter from IBM, who is leading the effort of the Jakarta EE 9 release, and he will be talking about that. But I'm here presenting the agenda for today's meeting. And I do want to recognize that we're living in a little bit different situation than in February, at least in this Western hemisphere. We're all impacted by the coronavirus. And for that reason, also, Steve Millidge is not able to be today with us not because he has the coronavirus, but because he needed to change his travel plans. And he's actually currently on the plane. So we will owe you the session with Steve, and we will most likely, as soon as Steve safely arrives to his destination, we will do one-off recording and share that with the community. So knowing that, we will immediately go to Kevin Sutter, and he will provide us the update on what's going on with Jakarta EE 9 release. And after that, I will invite on the screen my colleagues Ivar and Shabnam, and we will do a quick update on what's going on with regards to Jakarta EE from the Eclipse Foundation perspective. So without really holding off the call further, I will just give the presenters right to Kevin. And Kevin, please take it over.
Okay, thank you. Okay, how is that? Is that showing okay, Tanya? Tanya, I can't hear you.
I just muted myself. It shows great. Thank
Okay,
you, Kevin.
thank you. Okay, so what I wanted to do today is kind of walk through some of the items related to our current Jakarta EE 9 plan, where we're at with the progress, and then even touch on some of the process. I know we've been getting a lot of questions on the various mailing lists on, how do I contribute and what's still left to do? People are seeing the APIs getting done and they're wondering, well, what else needs to be done? And how can I help contribute? So I want to try to walk through that. I do have a presentation, but I'm going to be kind of bopping over to a browser quite often and actually walk through different things related to where we're at and what the process is. So this chart is a little busy, but I did want to highlight that Steve Millidge helps me out. I am not the only release lead for Jakarta EE 9. Steve Millidge from Pyara is helping out considerably, and we're both trying to herd all of the components into delivering Jakarta EE 9. The majority of our discussions happen on two mailing lists. There's the platform mailing list, and that's really the Jakarta EE 9 platform development mailing list, but a lot of the discussions are happening there. And then when we need to reach all of the different specification projects, there is a mailing list for the specification project leads. Now, anybody can subscribe to these mailing lists, so you don't have to be on the platform project. You don't have to be a project lead in order to be on these mailing lists. Anybody can subscribe to them and monitor the discussion that's happening there. So that's where Steve and I and others, Bill Shannon, David Blevins, we're all working together trying to get Jakarta EE 9 together, figured out, and get it delivered. And so that's where our discussions are mainly happening. Now, when you drop down a level, then maybe you're interested in JSF, or I guess now it's Jakarta server faces, or maybe you're interested in enterprise beans or JPA, the persistence API. Then you need to drop down a level and take a look at the individual project development mailing lists, because they may have specific items that need to be done in order to complete each of these. And I'll be walking through some of that as we get into more detail. So instead of going through the detail on this chart, I think I'm going to come over here and let's see if this works okay. And I'm going to go right out here to the release plan. Now, Tanya, is that readable or should I enlarge it?
Let me ask the others. It's kind of readable to me. Yeah. Here are confirms. Fantastic.
Okay, good. Okay. So the Jakarta EE 9 release plan is complete. It's been approved. We have the version of it out on our webpage so that we can all reference it. It's not just a GitHub source file. We wanted to make it more permanent, I guess is the way to put it. So we put the release plan out here. You'll notice that the number one item here at the top of our list is namespace changes. And so the biggest change that we're doing for Jakarta EE 9 is changing from the Java X package name to the Jakarta package name. And this is a requirement that had to be put in place based on the contribution from Oracle. And so this is nothing that we could challenge or anything. We knew that we had to do it. So this is the biggest change that we're doing, and we're trying to limit the changes to just this namespace change. There are a couple of exceptions, which I'll touch on when we go back to the charts, where individual components had to do a release plan, but this way we could define a single release plan that covers 99% of all of the work that's going in across all of the components. So we did identify this namespace change, the specification documents. So those of you that are familiar with Jakarta EE 8, the platform specification and the web profile specification, those were the only two that actually had text, real text from past releases of Java EE. And those were the only documents that had all of that information from the past releases. All of the component pieces, the JSP, JSF, EJB, JPA, all of those, we only had boilerplate specifications. And all that it was our scope statement for that component. And then we relied on the Java doc. And that's what we did for the specifications, the component specifications in the past. But now all of the source code for the specifications is available to every component. So we're not identifying this as an absolute requirement for Jakarta EE 9, but since all of the source code is there, almost all of the components are stepping up and saying, yes, I do want to update the specification document and get that released as a real specification. And so almost all components, actually, I haven't heard of any component that is not doing this work. So we're all very active on trying to get the specifications up to date. Backwards compatibility, we are, because of some of the changes that we're doing for Jakarta EE 9, not only the namespace change, but we're doing some pruning of old technologies. We don't want to enforce or require any new implementations to implement these older items. So we are not enforcing backwards compatibility with previous releases with Jakarta EE 9. So we're trying to set a new bar, and the bar is lower, and we're trying to set a new lower bar for entry for new implementations. So we are not requiring backwards compatibility for Jakarta EE 9. Now, individual implementations, they may very well need to do that or want to do that. I'll speak from my personal experience with IBM and our Liberty application server is, yes, we will have backwards compatibility with the previous releases because that's what we do. And other implementations will probably be doing the same thing. But from an overall specification viewpoint, from Jakarta EE specification viewpoint, we are not documenting this backwards compatibility requirement. The other thing, the Java SE version, we are going to require Java SE 11 for doing certification testing, but all of the APIs will be compiled at Java SE 8, and that would allow other implementations to actually build their application server at Java SE 8 level and do their testing at SE 8 level. But if you do SE 8, you also have to do SE 11. So Java 11 is a minimum requirement, and if you want to go backwards to Java 8, that's a separate step. Okay, so just to show here some of the various components that are all part of Jakarta EE 9. Want to highlight a few here, the ones that were added to Jakarta EE 9. So Java SE 11 identified a few technologies that were not going to be part of their Java SE releases going forward. So those items are Jakarta activation, XML binding, XML web services metadata, and SOAP with attachments. So we have picked those back up. They're going to be brought back into the Jakarta EE fold. But as you can see, only Jakarta activation will be a required piece that has to be implemented, and the other ones are being listed as optional. There's also two other specifications that were part of Jakarta EE 8 that we are going to now mark optional. One of them is a full specification, Enterprise Web Services, otherwise known as JSR 109. That will be marked optional. And then there's an API group, a EJB 2.x API group. It's a specific API group that's defined in the EJB specification. And that API group is going to be marked optional. In addition, there's a few specifications that are going to be pruned. And basically, these are all of them that were in the stable project within EE4J or within Jakarta EE. And so XML registries, JAX-R, JAX-RPC, the deployment and management. And all of those will be pruned, removed from Jakarta EE 9. The other piece that we voted to remove is the distributed interoperability that's defined in the EJB 3.2 core specification. Specifically, this is chapter 10. So wanted to highlight that will also be removed. The other thing that I'm going to be touching on as we get into the project board are the different waves. And we've identified these dependency waves. So as each of these technologies are completed, we know that some of them have to be done before others. And the ones that are at it's called an independent wave in the release platform. We also call it, or release plan, we call it wave 0 as well. So the independent one is wave 0. And then you can see that we have out through wave 7. So that's our kind of our dependency graph. And let's see, the rest of the information I think we'll be covering. Okay, let's see, where's my mouse? Here we go. Okay, so I mentioned, that's the overall release plan. That handles everything within the Jakarta EE 9 family, except for two items. One of them was Jakarta activation, and that's mainly because that was kind of dropped from Java SE 11, and we wanted to bring that in. And so we wanted to have a separate release plan for that. And it was actually dropping a UI library that no longer exists. And so that affected their API a little bit, and we wanted to update that. So that required a separate release plan. And for EJBs, there was another API that was removed a long time ago, the identity, and that affected one of their APIs. And then as you just heard, there were several updates to the EJB with making the API group, the 2.x API group optional, and by dropping support for the distributed interop. And so there's more of a ripple effect through their release plan, and so then they did their own release plan as well. Okay, so now I want to get in. Let's see, how am I doing on time? Okay, doing good. So we are trying to track all of the work with the project boards. And this is where people are asking, okay, but I don't know what needs to be done. So this is what and how can I contribute? So this is what I want to do, is kind of walk through what we're doing with the project board and what are the different pieces that each of these components are requiring. So first of all, before I go into the detail, I want to mention the 4 pieces that we need in order for a component to release, or a specification to release. We need all of the APIs updated to move from the Java X to Jakarta namespace. We need, the specifications, I mentioned it's not a firm requirement, but all of the components are working towards that goal. So we will have a complete complement of specifications. All of the TCKs need to be updated, and that's both a platform TCK, and some of the components have individual standalone TCKs. And then, of course, the compatible implementations, because we have to prove that a given specification is implementable, and then use the TCKs to show that it's testable. And so all 4 of these things fit together. And this is what we are driving towards for Jakarta EE 9 across all of the components. Okay, so let's start here with the project board. And I'll increase the font here a little bit.
Looks pretty good, Kevin.
That's pretty good? Okay.
Yep.
Oops. Okay. So the first column that I kind of want to highlight are all of the APIs. Now, just this week, we were able to complete a milestone or release candidate for all of the APIs across all of Jakarta EE 9. Back on my chart, I had indicated that even the platform and web profile, the release candidate 1 for those complete packages, those were released this week as well. So all of these are available in Maven. And so I'll just kind of show that all of the different APIs are available. Now, we did it this way to make them available in Maven so that external projects, not only the EE4J stuff, but all the external projects could start experimenting with this. I know that we have started to do it within IBM, and I'm sure other organizations have done it. Tooling people have probably started to take a look at this as well, and starting to see what's going to be the impact by bringing in all of these new APIs. So you'll notice also I have mentioned waves, and you'll see that there's different waves. I have labels on all these different things across the board. If you're not familiar with the project boards, having these different labels makes it very easy to filter information. So as an example, let's pretend I want to only look at the items that are coming in wave 1. So now by just filtering on wave 1, you can see kind of where we're at across the project. You can see that, the majority of the projects are still over here where we're trying to get through the early phases of the checklist. And then there's a few more that are moving forward, and we've got 2 that are almost ready to step into the review cycle. And now I had sent out a request last week, and I know that EL, the expression language, we are trying to move that forward. We've got concurrency that we are trying to move forward as well. And hopefully we've got bean validation coming as well. And what I want to do is I want to try to take these through the process to actually get them all the way through the process of creating their PRs, which I'm going to talk about, and doing the final releases, just to try to get this, the wheels greased, basically, to try to show that the process is working and to give a view of how to get there. As an example here, it's very easy to put in a different wave, and you'll notice that, like for wave 0, there are some things that are out here where we are trying to get it ready for a final review. And so there's different, depending on the state of each of these components, they'll be across all these different columns as we're trying to move them forward. Okay, so I came back here because I kind of wanted to highlight these waves and what we are trying to do. Now, I know these dates are not necessarily achievable at this point. I went very conservative with these dates, but I looked at all of them being sequential and saying, okay, we needed wave 1 completely done before we do wave 2, completely done before we do wave 3. And I know in reality that is not really the case. When we did Jakarta EE 8, we had a lot of overlap, and that's all good that we have this overlap. But just to try to lay out the overall schedule, I did it very conservatively and did it sequentially. And then that's why we're trying to get some of these components across the finish line for wave 1, so that we can really see, okay, how much work is it to get to wave 1, get it complete, get the ballot started, and then apply that across all the other components to find out, okay, where are we really at, and what are the, what's the end game with trying to get all of these items done. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that checklist. Because I want to show a little bit on what we actually need from each of these components. So if people are asking what is it that we, where can I help? What I would first do is take a look at a components specification version epic issue. So any of those issues that are on the project board, it has a checklist in here of all the items that need to be done in order to be complete. So like this one is JPA. I know that team is working on updating their specification, but I know it's not complete either. So if anyone has any interest in helping out the JPA team on doing their specification, this would be a good component to maybe, get involved with. There's, I'm going to go into some other detail here as well. The APIs we've already talked about, and everybody has the APIs available in Maven Central, so that's all good. We've got the TCKs that all need to be updated. The compatible implementations need to be updated. And then we need to get into the final preparation for the release. So this is where everyone, if you're looking to help out and you have an interest in a particular technology, find out where this team is at, looking at this checklist, and then contact that team via their mailing list and find out how you can help out. Most of it will be, just a second, stop that bouncing thing there. Okay. Most of the work is going to be, divided up. There's probably going to be multiple people. They're looking for PRs. They'll be reviewed, as you generate more experience and karma with the project, I mean, then there's a chance of getting invited to be a committer as well. So there's a lot of benefits for helping out, but instead of just generally asking, how can I help? Try to find a technology that you have some interest in, because that's going to be more interesting to you, as well as more beneficial to the teams that are looking for assistance. Okay, so now I just want to get into a little bit more detail on each of the items that need to be done to see if there's areas where you might have interest in helping out. The specifications. So we want to get rid of the boilerplate specifications and put the real specifications in place. All of the specifications source for all of the components are now available, and almost all of them are in the respective components GitHub repos. I do have a link here, and I will be making these charts available as well via the folder that Tanya sets up. And so all of these different links will be available to you. But in case the component that you're interested in doesn't have the real source yet, and it's still the boilerplate, then this link here will help you find the source. And if you're having an issue with finding it, just ping me directly, and we can get you going on that. One thing that we have found is that large specifications are easier to manage if they're broken down into chapters. So I know I helped with the platform spec, the server faces spec, and the enterprise beam spec, just breaking it down into chapters. It makes it easier to consume. So for people that are doing the updates, it makes it easier to just kind of confine yourself to a single chapter. And granted, sometimes people will find that, okay, every one of these references has to change across all of the chapters. And it's like, okay, then go ahead and do a PR that does that, but make it kind of quick. So you're going to go in, make the change across all the chapters, create that PR and submit it, and, get it reviewed and approved and merged. But the idea here is we didn't want someone to dive into a whole specification, let's say server faces, and then they're working on a PR that there's, a huge document, and then pretty soon other people are putting stuff in, and then you've got merge conflicts, and that just makes it very difficult. So take a look at that. If you've got a large specification, it may be worthwhile to break it into chapters. If it's a small spec, then maybe it's better just to leave it a single source file. It's really up to each component to decide that. And there's kind of like a two-step process. The first thing is just what I'm calling Jakartaizing it. And it's basically all of the references to the old Java EE stuff, the old Java EE links. There's references to old Java EE URLs and websites. Old Java EE technology names. There's a lot of things there just to get it Jakartaized. And so that was the first step. Like, this is what I did with the platform specification for Jakarta EE 8. So that's kind of the first step. But then the next step is getting it to the Jakarta EE 9 level. And that's doing all of the updates from Java X to Jakarta. And now a lot of times that's just like a global change. I have found it easier to just do a global change. And then as you're going through and reviewing it, maybe you're going to find some exceptions to the changes that were done to change to Jakarta. Maybe there's some that still had to be Java X. Maybe there's a portion of the transaction API that is still part of Java SE, and that has to stay at Java X. So there are some exceptions, but 99% of them are changing from Java X to Jakarta. Okay, the TCKs. Every component and the platform has a TCK. Now, a lot of people, maybe you've heard the term CTS, and that's kind of equivalent to the platform TCK. So I put a link here. This link provides all of the different component TCKs that are part of the platform TCK. So there's a ton of different directories under this. And there's also, just to be aware, in case you're looking at this and you say, oh, I found a folder for concurrency, so all of the tests for concurrency are in this folder. That may not be the case, because maybe concurrency has some dependencies on other components, and so maybe there's another folder or two that contains those dependency type tests. So just to be aware, it's probably good, if you're looking for things related to your component, you might have to do a search across this whole directory to find out if there's other tests that are bringing in your particular component that also need to be updated. Now, the platform TCK is dependent on a very archaic test harness, but it does work, and that's what the platform TCK is currently set up to do. There's quite a discussion going on our platform mailing list where we are trying to figure out a way to, I don't know how you want to, not standardize, but to develop standalone TCKs that can still be used as part of the platform TCK. So CDI and bean validation, those are the classic examples because they were produced by Red Hat and they were always separate. So whenever an application server had to go through their test effort, they had to run the platform TCK, and then they had to run the CDI and the bean validation TCKs separate. But because those were very consistent using JUnit and Archillion, it made it quite easy to, once you got that set up in your environment, then it was pretty easy to test CDI and bean validation. I know Andy Guibert he's kind of started this discussion on the platform mailing list and using JSON-B as an example and trying to get the TCKs more ingrained with the individual components so that then they could be tested on an ongoing basis without having to wait until the platform TCK is ready to be tested. So there's benefits to having these standalone tests. And so that's kind of the move that we're doing, but it's not a requirement for Jakarta EE 9. So I want to make sure that that's clear. There's no requirement to do standalone TCKs, but some of the components are looking at doing it to try and make it more ready for the future. We want to figure out what is the proper path going forward for Jakarta EE 10, and so that's why some of the components are starting earlier. Okay, so the other piece that has to be done is a compatible implementation. Now, Glassfish, Eclipse Glassfish, that is the overall platform compatible implementation. So when we release the platform specification and we have the platform APIs, we require Glassfish as being the compatible implementation. There's other specification projects that also require Glassfish right now as the compatible implementation. So it's kind of a catch-22 where, yes, we want to have independent implementations, but we still need a compatible implementation that will work for the platform and web profile. There's also some compatible implementations that are built separately, but they still feed into Glassfish. And so I put a list there. So maybe, if someone on the call, if you have an interest in JAX-RS, well, Jersey is the compatible implementation for JAX-RS, and then that feeds into Glassfish. So maybe you have an interest there where you could help out with a compatible implementation of Jersey. And there's corresponding ones. Mahara is JSF, Soteria is for security, Tyrus, web sockets, Yasin is JSON-B. Metro is a bunch of different items. It's still a separate deliverable, but it covers many different specifications, and that's why the link is not direct, because there's so many different ones. And then, of course, we have a few standalone compatible implementations, and these feed into the items that I mentioned before with CDI and bean validation. And so those compatible implementations, yes, they are developed separately. They're maintained in separate repositories, but they're brought in as part of the overall deliverable for Jakarta EE. Okay, so that's where this is where I'm going to be finishing up. Yep, on this this chart here, just to kind of bring us back and describe the different parts that need to be done. Now, the APIs, as I've described, they should pretty much be done except for the items that we find during testing. And we have found a few things during testing. So we're doing new updates to the release candidates or milestone drivers, but the APIs are pretty much done. Specifications there's a lot of work left to be done on those, especially the larger specifications. So if you want to help out in an easy area to try to, if you're really good at ASCII doc, that would be fantastic, because we need that type of conversion to get them all into ASCII doc format. And then the TCKs and compatible implementations, they kind of go hand in hand, because you can't do one without the other, and they both, require work in individual components as well as at the platform level with Glassfish and the platform TCK. Okay, and then just put a few pointers out here. The overall flow, everything that I've talked about so far, with going through the different parts and preparing for a release, that's all covered by the operations guide. So that is the number one place if you're wondering, okay, where do I go to find out what the flow is? Why are they trying to do this part of the process now versus later or whatever? Take a look at this operations guide. That should give you an overall flow of what we are trying to do for releasing the specification. I've walked over the project board quite a bit. I've mentioned the mailing lists. We also have a new link here, the Jakarta EE Connect mailing lists. That's something that was just put in place so that, Eclipse has a total list of all of their mailing lists, but then you have to filter it and try to figure out which ones are related to Jakarta EE. This one here takes you to that level of detail. So it's a one-stop shop to look at all of the mailing lists that are available for Jakarta EE. And I've mentioned all of the different communications that we do on the platform mailing list. We also have a weekly call. It's every Tuesday, except for the first Tuesday of each month, because then that time slot is reserved for the PMC call. So basically it's 3 or 4 other calls during the month, and they're on Tuesdays, and that link there will take you right to the Google Calendar for the information on that. And okay, so I should point out, because I'm going to be putting this information or this presentation out in Tanya's folder, I do have other charts out here that go into more detail as to prepping for the release review and what's needed for the PRs and links to other items to prepare you for the final release. And so I did have a few more charts out there for that. Okay, so.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin? Comments? Okay, nothing yet. So slowly I'll start inviting Ivar and Shabnam on the call, who will help me present and give an update on what's going on with the Jakarta EE from Eclipse Foundation perspective. And we will thank Kevin so much, and looking forward for more updates on Jakarta EE 9 release and progress on it next month. So thank you, Kevin. Wave to Kevin, and then let me just invite Shabnam as well on the screen. And we'll try to make it more interactive and a little bit more interesting, hopefully for everyone. Let me also share my screen, because I wanna. We prepared a couple of slides for you. Here. Okay. So while Shabnam is getting on, I just want to see if you can see. Actually, I wanted to share. Oh, I'm not able to share that. So I will at the end show the Jakarta EE Community Drive and show you where you can find the slides, just in case you're not familiar with it. So the folder is already.
Hey,
Go ahead. I can hear you, Shabnam.
All right, that's great. Okay.
So yeah, so I will show you also the where to look for the slides. But let me just start with what we're having here. And let me see, maybe I can do this a little bit better and put it in the presentation mode. How about that? Okay. Is this better? Okay. So let me just start with recognizing again that we're in the brand new situation for most of us. And we're trying to adapt to what's going on and be more present online. And what happened end of February just goes hand in hand with that. So our Jakarta One live stream program is still very popular. And we had one live stream in Japan in Japanese. It was quite successful. We had 6 hours of content, 220 attendees, 10 sessions, and we're looking to organize these type of events in a local language, throughout the world. So if there is interest in your community, please get in touch with us, any one of us, with me, with Shabnam or Ivar, and we will be happy to help you out and get this going for in your country and in your language. So another thing that we were hoping to do, and again, because of the new situation, it is now postponed, was the Cloud Native Day for Java. So Shabnam, do you want to kind of talk to this one? You were heavily involved into this one.
Right. So Cloud Native for Java Day was a co-located event at KubeCon Amsterdam, which was originally was supposed to happen on March 30th. But since KubeCon has postponed their event due to the COVID-19 situation, so we also postponed the Cloud Native for Java Day. I just have to mention that a lot of work and efforts have been put into preparations for this event. We had around 100 registrations for Cloud Native for Java Day by the time it got canceled. But Jakarta EE Working Group and also the marketing committee are still interested to run this event. So we are waiting for more updates from KubeCon to confirm the dates. And so please keep an eye out on the Cloud Native for Java Day website for more updates, and stay tuned. It's going to happen, but we just don't know the dates yet.
Yeah, thanks, Shabnam. We were all looking forward to go and visit Amsterdam and connect with everyone, but we will do that just at a later date. However, we are still preparing for other conferences, and now most of the conferences will be moving to the and turning into virtual events. So the next two that we were planning to attend, and we will still be present in the virtual form, are Red Hat Summit and IBM Think. So Shabnam, do you have any specifics on this one? What's going on? And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Red Hat Summit is going to be on April 28th to 29th, and I think Ivar has a presentation there. And as far as I know, they haven't updated the dates or the time yet, but they're going to send updates soon. And for IBM Think, it's going to be from May 5th to May 7th. And again, we don't have the dates of the exact schedule of this Jakarta EE related sessions. But we're going to, once we have more updates, we're going to promote all Jakarta EE related sessions on our social channels so that you can, if you're interested, you can definitely participate and be present there.
And if it happens that you are presenting about Jakarta EE in any of these events, please make sure to let us know so we can promote that as well.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on. So yeah, we're super excited that we now have additional compatible products. So right now we have 10 compatible products in total. So JBoss Enterprise Application Platform, Payara Server, and Geus, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing this right, but and apologies for that. But that's another compatible product, and then a little bit more in maybe nicer slide for presenting all the companies that have their compatible products. So we have 6 full platform compatible products and 4. So hold on, this is I think it's 6 full and 6 web products. So we will correct this slide before we share it with you. But you know, this is super exciting news, and it's good to see that we're growing. Also, it's reflected in the Jakarta EE working group members. So we have Primetone as the enterprise member. We have the Apusik as well as the new member, as well as the Max Soft. So we are absolutely thrilled to see the growth and interest, and we're expecting even more growth. Hoping for sure, but expecting as well. And then we've been trying to really engage more with the community and come up with different programs and ways to get closer to developers. So we right now have those 2 programs now developed and up and running for Jugs. And I'm wondering, Ivar, do you want to take over from here and talk a little bit more about Adopt the Spec and sponsoring Jug's virtual events?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we have started these 2 initiatives, the Adopt the Spec and sponsoring the Chromecast account for Jugs to use. And I'll go through a little bit of detail of both of them. So if you take the next slide. So this slide shows the, when it's changed, there you go, shows the link for information about Adopt the Spec. And the next slide will give you how this page looks like. And all the information here, that's all you need to be able to sign up with your Jug, and examples for activities you can do to involve help with the specs, like the things Kevin mentioned in his talk, and other things. So we have written up a couple of examples here for what you can do to help, and also there are instructions for how to get listed on these pages. So the next slide will show how a specification page will look like, and this JSON processing has been adopted by 2 Jugs, and you can see the Madras Jug and Sujava here. So if your Jug were to adopt this spec, you will get your Jug logo up here as well. And we will also have a total listing of all the Jugs that are participating in the program on the Adopt a Spec page. So this is a nice way to kind of show that your Jug is active in the community, to get some traffic to your Jug, And it's also a great way of helping out the specifications.
And needless to say, that we're inviting you and encouraging you to get involved and go to your local jugs and invite them to adopt the spec.
Yes. So, next slide. So last week we were working pretty hard with, since we're all grounded and not able to even hold our small Jug meetups, we thought that, hey, let's give this Chromecast platform to the Jugs for free. So what we're doing is we're created a Chromecast account, and all Jugs can set up their events there and stream for free, like we're doing right now. And the next slide will show that we already have 2 events coming up. So we have the Jack's Jug are doing a talk later today, and also the Istanbul Jug has signed up for an April 16, and there are a couple of ones coming in between there as well. So the Chromecast channel for Jug is going to be a place you can go to actually attend Jugs all over the world, and they will stream content live there. And if you're running a Jug, you should sign up and get your content out there as well. And the next slide will actually show a couple of links for how to do that. So the Chromecast channel to navigate to is the chromecast.io/Chromecast_JEE Jugs. And that will list the page I showed in the previous slide, where you will get all the upcoming events. And the instructions for how to sign up and get your events out there is on our Google Drive. It's kind of hard to read up this URL, but you can get the slides afterwards, and we tweeted it. So you'll find instructions there for how to get enrolled to this and get access to this account. And it's all for free, and we don't require anything from you. We are happy to come to your Jug and talk about Jakarta EE, but if you want to have other contents, we're fine with that as well. It's just an offer from us to you.
Right.
So that was what I was thinking to say.
So I would just add that we are also preparing a PowerPoint presentation for Jugs that you can use, and whoever is interested in Jakarta EE can also locally present. So that will come shortly. And just to thank to both Shabnam and Ivar, we put quite a bit of work in this. So do let us know how you like it or don't like it, how we can improve. Shabnam, would you like to add anything else?
No, that's it. Basically, I think it'll be completed very soon, and we'll be sharing that, and hopefully that'll enable the community to be able to, as you mentioned, to be able to use that and leverage on that to provide updates if they're interested on Jakarta EE, provide updates in Jug meetups.
Okay, so let me see now. I didn't because I was presenting. Oh, can you see now my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so this is the folder Jakarta EE Community, and in the year 2020, we already have the March folder set up here, where you will find this presentation, and pretty soon Kevin will drop in his presentation on Jakarta EE 9 progress. So that's where you can find the information. But in general, this is the folder where you can find the information on Jugs, on the live stream, or pictures, or anything else. If you let us know what else you would be interested in, we will put it there as well. Now let me see. Send the link, please. Do you mean the link to the community folder by any chance? If it's the link to the community folder, let me just grab it, and I will do that in the chat right away. Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen for the moment, but any questions or comments? Where's Shabnam? Shabnam, you went away.
I think she left.
Oh, she doesn't
No,
want
I'm
to hang
here.
out.
Oh, she's there.
You're here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Not hit the screen 3 ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fine. So do let us know, please, how we can improve and how we can get you more involved and engaged. I do owe you a session with Steve, and we will get on it as soon as possible, and I will send it out to the community mailing list. Any questions or anything you want to share at this point in the chat? Okay, if not, then we're all set for this month, and we will talk to you again next month. In the meanwhile, there are going to be all of these hashtags from Ivar, another monthly update from me. We will organize, we will be reaching out to you any way possible, and stay tuned for more online content that we're preparing. Yeah, be in touch and stay well. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Ivar. Thanks, Shabnam.
Thank you. Bye.